Good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Strategy International podcast. I am your host, George Sanchez. Thank you for joining us once again with another incredible host. Today, we have Dr. Josef Demergis. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to actually participate in the second podcast of Strategy International. I watched the first one. You did great, so hopefully this will be a sign for things to come.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on, and it's a pleasure to actually be participating in this great initiative by Strategy International. And for those who are here for the very first time, this is a podcast that brings you value and through different guests from all over the world that have extensive knowledge on international affairs, policy, strategy, security, defense, environment, all these interesting things, and we bring them to you. And Dr. Demergis is one of these individuals, and I thank you for that, for being here. I want to jump right into this, given the knowledge that you have in international relations and international policy, to talk a little bit about what everyone is talking about, right? The Russia-Ukraine conflict. And because you specialize specifically in diplomacy, which we'll get into a little bit later, I want you to give us a little bit of your thoughts on what role you think diplomacy has in this conflict, or has it had so far? Because it's lasted way longer than anyone has ever imagined this conflict to have lasted. Where do you think diplomacy fits in here?
Well, it's definitely a seminal event, since the last time we actually saw what amounts to a proxy war between the Western countries and the proponents of liberal systems of actually talking to each other rather than invading or using hard power to achieve one's aims. Well, the last time we have seen that was during the Cold War. Right. So it's quite a seminal event in that regard, but it is also a peculiar event as to having what really amounts to almost a multipolar world in many respects. During the Cold War, we had two main blocks. One, a country knew where it would stand. You know, you would either be with the Eastern Bloc, or you would be with the forces of good. You would be with the Western Bloc. Nowadays, we see a China emerging, especially in the Pacific Rim, having such a huge economic activity, which brings about a lot of political and diplomatic influence as well. And definitely China is aspiring to be the next superpower. Mm-hmm. Right now, we only have one superpower, that is the United States. Russia is really a regional power at best, and one that is not really able to exert its influence. And perhaps that's why it chose the hard means. It chose to invade Ukraine rather than try whatever other methods it would have at its disposal to actually achieve whatever aims it had, whether these aims were right or wrong.
Why do you think diplomacy hasn't worked so far?
Diplomacy doesn't. Well, we like to say that diplomacy always works, and it's a matter of give and take. But I don't think diplomacy always work. Of course, it's there at the beginning, and it will always be there in the end. But unfortunately, war and strife in general, and the use of actual violence to achieve one's aims, I think it's a matter of historical perspective, and it's the matter of humans actually deciding that it is the best way to go about these things. Diplomacy probably didn't work that well with Ukraine and Russia, because the Russians were probably thinking that what they had before them was what we would term the Thucydides gap. That is, an Ukraine that tried to stand on its own with the help of the Western powers and trying to exert itself to avoid being under Russia's thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I suppose the thinking in the Kremlin is that they would use old school methods, old school Soviet methods for
Mhm.
them to achieve their political aims with I don't know, with a kind of with an invention that is actually abhorrent to mostly free-thinking men and certainly to the West at least.
Right. Is this a sign of things to come? You think, if it hasn't worked this far, do you think that the people on the ground or behind the scenes that are trying to find a ground on which to agree upon, do you think that this is a sign for them that things perhaps may not go their way this time, or do you think that whoever? Well, now we're going to talk a little bit about Turkey's role in this, because they seem to be the only mediator in this conflict. Do you think they see at all a light at the end of the tunnel?
That's a great question, because actually the whole Ukrainian invasion is actually a test event for many countries, especially for China.
Mm.
Depending on the outcome, whether this will go well for Russia or not, well, we really hope not. But even if there is a kind of stalemate, this will probably drive developments and modulate the thinking of the Chinese government as to its aspirations in the Pacific and everywhere in the world, because we currently have China exerting itself globally. You know, even in Africa, in Europe, you do have a lot of effort in it trying to expand. They had and have the famous Silk Roads they aspire to, which is really a way of trying to project their power. So I do think this is a test event, and if the West backs up as to what may be achievable in having a rogue country invading another one, then that would bring forth other countries that have such aspirations,
Right.
as is Turkey, for example, and try to do things that are not really in phase either with international relations or what those international relations should be.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned China, and I wanted to bring it up a little bit later, but since you're bringing it up, we'll go there now. You wrote an interesting article that I read, and it seems that almost immediately following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, many experts were quick to look at the possibility of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. You think that that is a possibility, that it may happen, or did the rapid sanctions from the West toward Russia serve as an example, like you say, for other major expansionist countries such as China to kind of hold back and see what happens?
Well, we can answer this on a case-by-case basis. Certainly, the Western help to Ukraine is not really that naive. There is clearly a look upon at what China may do in the future. That's a given. For instance, United States strategic thinking nowadays is almost contained in what will happen in the Pacific in the next decades, because that's where China is emerging.
But go ahead. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm not sure whether China and whatever repercussions its actions may have will be a mirror as to what will happen with Russia. Apart from the United States, which is not dependent on Russia at all, the European Union is very dependent on it as far as energy is concerned. So we now have a war where the European Union is probably the one that has to lose more, along with Russia. The United States is almost losing nothing because it will be a supplier to the United Union for energy, and it will achieve its geostrategic aims of trying to nullify the power Russia have. But on the other hand, China is not one that will cater for the same demands West has upon Russia to stop the war. China has a huge manufacturing capacity that Russia has, and that manufacturing capacity manufacture products that make their way to Western markets.
It's interesting that China is somehow in this equation because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems so ironic that all the sanctions that have been imposed by Russia from the Western countries are benefiting China's economy.
Yeah, they do, and letting Western propaganda aside, well was knew that Russia wouldn't go on its knees in the first month or so of the war, because we knew that they had external markets to actually sell their wares. They may sell them at a much cheaper price, but even before the war started, President Putin had made a deal with the Chinese president for selling to them gas, oil, and all the energy really China needs. And that also happens with India as well, which is a huge power. And, may become a superpower one day. I don't know what, although I don't think the Indian aspirations are of that magnitude, but certainly the population, the size of the country, and the way it's advancing step by step, India is a force to be reckoned with. So Russia has a market like that, which allows it to not fall on its knees, at least at this initial stage. And I recently saw that Turkey, along with Iran and Russia, had a meeting together. And what they're talking is really putting up an anti-Western front. Well, the Chinese diplomacy was not present there. It was the only one missing. But the aims are really the same for China as well.
So do you think it's going to get down, or has it gotten already to the point where it's a question of attrition? Who's going to lose more than the other side? Because like you say, the European Union depends greatly on resources coming from Russia. That's not there. Russia can get what it wants or sell it to other countries. So at the end of the day, is the European Union ever going to have the upper hand?
No, because European Union wouldn't know strategy if it hit it on her head. If we presume Europe is a female, and that's one of the most unfortunate things about the European Union. It never had any inclination of strategies that have to do not with immediate needs, but with needs 40, 50 years from now.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's probably because Germany is at the forefront of the European Union, and Germans are not strategists themselves as well. And if somebody says the opposite, I have 2 world wars to actually throw at him or her and say no, they're not. Germany, after the Second World Wars, and of course its institution in the international community, as it should have been, they had a very conscious decision. They made a very conscious decision to actually extend towards the east once again. And after the Cold War, they had that huge reservoir of gas, coal, metals, of raw materials that is Russia. And so Germany became dependent on those resources, and that is the European Union became dependent on those without any other external sources and without any prior thinking of what if this deal, if this arrangement would go wrong in the long term. And that is one of the major failings of the European Union. And despite all the rhetoric and whatever measures they're trying to do, it's very difficult to actually supplant such a huge resource of energy that is Russia in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It will take it will probably take much longer than that, and I'm not too sure how much the European population can actually have that kind of stagnation and inflation together in its everyday life.
Well, the main challenge, I guess, is that you have 27 countries that have to absolutely agree in order to move forward. As this conflict keeps lasting longer and longer, do you think that it will have any effect on, the somewhat unified stance that the EU countries have maintained thus far? I mean, we're seeing a political crisis in Italy that has recently started over arms sales to Ukraine. Some Eastern countries are preparing for a harsh winter due to the limited energy supplies from Russia. How do you think the relations within the EU countries will evolve as this conflict perpetuates?
Well, we always see some certain distancing between political leaders themselves. Although for now, only the Hungarian Prime Minister is the only one that is really quite obstructive as to what the European Union wants. But the problem is we haven't really gone now to the winter that is coming, where we will have huge energy needs, and we'll probably have huge energy problems. If the population suffers, political agendas and solidarity and stuff like that tends to go out of the window, because the political animal, its first aim is to actually survive politically, to be at the forefront of its country.
Right.
And I suppose there is also a very different optic as to what is happening in Ukraine between northern and more southern countries of the European Union, and as to what the suitable countermeasures should be. A prolonged war would certainly not be at the interests of the European Union at all. And it would not be at the interests of Russia as well, and probably not Ukraine's, because apart from the huge help the West is giving Ukraine, and what President Zelensky is saying, the problem is that there are huge losses of men. There are huge damages on Ukrainian infrastructure as well, and war just cannot go on. I do understand that they have been invaded, and but the thing is that Ukraine, if it did not have that Western help, and coupled with, of course, their extreme inefficiency of what we consider the mighty Russian army, which is really not mighty at all, brought us to this kind of stalemate. And I don't know, it's very difficult to say to the Ukrainians, it doesn't really help the rest of the world for you to fight, because they have been actually invaded in their country. I think we start to see certain crumblings inside the Ukrainian leadership as well. So that President Zelensky actually fired a lot of
his diplomats.
Political, and the judge advocate, I think, as well. And so there is certainly some other influences and thoughts going on, and nobody can really say they are for the better or for worse. European Union, I think, will be hurting almost as much as Ukraine in the financial regard.
Let's talk a little bit about the role of Turkey, given the strategic position it has, where literally it connects Europe to Asia, the relations it's always maintained with Russia, the relations it has with the EU, in addition to being a NATO ally, it has a pretty key role to play. From the Turkish perspective, if we look at it from their point of view, why is its role in this conflict so important?
Well, of course, it really has to do with geostrategy. They're just near to Russia, so they have some kind of importance. Of course, I think there is quite a fallacy in Western strategic thinking in giving too much importance to Turkey, with Turkey actually being one of the revisionist powers. And it's not something that came up with President Erdogan. It was a revisionist power before. But the way it's handling its international affairs right now, actually trying to strong arm NATO when coming to accepting Finland and Sweden into the North Atlantic Alliance, is probably a sign for things to come as far as Turkey's political maneuvering is concerned. I don't think that even if Erdogan goes away in some time from now, it's either the next elections or I don't know, until his death, because he's actually quite despotic in his ruling of Turkey. I do not think that Turkey's aims and political aspirations will not last. The thing about Turkey and what drives their foreign relations is that we should understand that all parties, no matter where they are in the political ideology spectrum, they are all very nationalistic. And that's what drives their thinking. And, their usual point of contrition is saying one to another, you're not nationalistic enough in that regard, or that regard, you're not patriot enough. And that's a very dangerous idea and strategy to have when dealing with the external world. Turkey, of course, with the Ukrainian question, has a role to play because due to being located in such a part of the earth where it plays a role. They are in the Black Sea. It is really trying to playing both sides, because they need Russia as well, because Russia would be the actual power that could actually inflict quite a lot of damage to them if it wanted to. And they actually need Russia to agree to what is happening in Syria, where Turkey has invaded, constantly invades parts of Syria, and trying to fight the Kurdish fighters there. Who Kurdish fighters are aligned with the West and are fighting the Islamist fascist organizations like Al-Qaeda and their various tentacles there.
Do you feel that the Western partners trust Turkey as an effective mediator? Can Turkey be trusted as a partner?
Well, in diplomacy, it's not really about trust. I do not think that hardened diplomats put that much trust in Turkey, but it all has to do with one's aspirations and what his or her interests are in this matter. So they are using Turkey because they think that it's in their interests that Turkey should remain on a pro-Western base. But we actually see Turkey taking a lot of steps of trying, I wouldn't say making it on its own, of trying to become apart from a regional power. And in their heads, and if you actually read about Turkish rhetoric and about Turkish aspirations, their aspirations are extending from the Mediterranean up to China. the Pan-Turan thing. So I think it's a matter of interests, and people actually trying to subjugate their interests, along with not subjugate, rather than bring forth their interests against the interests of Turkey, and trying to find an operational mean from where actions can actually be derived.
Yeah, because in a recent article that you wrote, you seem to question whether or not Turkey should remain in NATO. Yet everything that's been happening that we've been following since the beginning of the year, it feels as though Turkey is at the forefront. It's like smack in the middle. Obviously, you're Greek and you're much more aware of these things than anyone else about the provocations in the Eastern Mediterranean that seem to be nonstop, almost on a daily basis. You mentioned also the conditional support that it has given Sweden and Finland to join NATO, but yet continues.
The only country that actually was against Sweden and Finland
it was
joining NATO was Turkey, and Turkey for the last 40-50 years has been semi-openly attacking Greek sovereignty over the Aegean Sea. Greece, which is another NATO member, and this hugely destabilizes the eastern part of NATO. Turkey is the only country in the world that has issued a casus belli, a cause for war against Greece if Greece tries to extend its territorial waters from 6 to 12 nautical miles, as it is its right to do under the United Nations law of the sea.
I was saying, I mean, it's very conditional, right? The support to Sweden and Finland, it's met daily with threats to them on different criteria and actions that they should take. They're at the center of the most urgent decisions right now. I mean, we're having supply chain and maritime supply chain issues, obviously going through to the rest of Europe. They control the maritime passage into the Mediterranean. They're causing a problem with NATO enlargement. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, there was an announcement made between Ursula von der Leyen and Aliyev from Azerbaijan on energy supply to Europe. And it comes back to what you were saying about the rationale behind the European strategy about making partnerships with other countries that perhaps they shouldn't be, right?
Well,
Turkey's kind of in the middle of all this.
Yeah, and letting the Greek-Turkish equation aside, when we have a country like Turkey actually meeting with Iran's Khamenei and Russia at Tehran and having talks with them, what is that but an anti-Western alliance? So how can we actually say that Turkey is an ally of the West when it's actually meeting with some of its more prominent foes, and foes in the manner of of the way the West thinks that everyday people live, how states should behave, and how states should not behave.
Go ahead.
Because both Iran and Russia are under lots and lots of restrictions and ways of trying to excommunicate them from the global agenda and try to lessen their influence around the world. Iran has lots of tentacles around the Middle East, stirring a lot of trouble, and that's an ongoing effort for them for lots and lots of decades. So when you are meeting with them and actually trying to make an alliance with them, what are you signaling to the West? Are you signaling to the West? If you're not doing what I want you to do for me, I'm going to them, like a petulant child, or rather than I think you have actually swallowed your own propaganda about how strong you really are, and now trying to challenge the West, its interests, and not sharing its values, which for me is the worst at all.
Right.
If you do not share the values of liberty, of freedom, of being able to express yourself, which Turkey is notorious at, and actually asking for Sweden or Finland to send back to you Turkish citizens that did not agree with Erdogan's policies, so they were ousted, and to save their lives, they actually went and emigrated to Sweden and Finland. Then what kind of message does this give to our own societies? That we're actually forces of good and forces of truth, and we're not the ones to actually keep silent when a dictator comes knocking on our door. And that's why the West supported Ukraine. That's why it will keep supporting it, no matter what the outcome. And that's why the West must rethink its role as to Turkey's value in the whole geostrategic thinking and ways of operating.
Do you think there's ever a possibility that Turkey might either be ousted or asked to leave the alliance?
I'm not that expert on NATO, so I cannot possibly comment if there are actually legal ways to do about that. I think there are not, but I suppose one could do a NATO 2 count of alliance, and where actually you do not have such an ability to torpedo such kind of decisions.
Right.
And I remember about a couple of months ago, that the Turks have a Russian anti-aircraft missile system.
Yeah, the S-400.
In the River, the S-400. And we had photographs of American-built F-16s, which Turkey has, actually going in front of S-400 radars in order to see what kind of cross-section it had and what its vulnerabilities is. So they were actually testing Western armaments against Russian ones. You do understand that when you exploit such a technology one against the other, it's not only Turkey that is the recipient, it's Russia as well. So tell me, is that a kind of act that a NATO ally should do? I do not really think so.
I agree with you. The question that I have and many others might have as well is why are we sitting still as if nothing is happening? That's the question.
That's a good question, but I suppose that goes along with a lot of questions as both the superpowers, America, is thinking of what to do with Turkey and what the European Union is thinking. Because imagine if we substituted Russian energy with, I don't know, Azeri energy, with a pipeline coming through Turkey, and Turkey being the mediator between these two. Right. That would be one strategic mistake.
Big time.
Substituting another. I know that there is kind of that thinking as well, and especially when you'll have so much trouble as we're expecting to come in the following winter, energy-wise, there will probably be some more hasty decision-making by the European Union, and I do wonder it will become. We may talk sometimes. Usually experts talk from a position of authority, but we should keep in mind that we do not have a crystal ball. We do not really know what will happen. Well, it's to Russia's advantage to take this to the bitter end, unless for some reasons there's a change of guard in the Kremlin.
Right.
Things happen. Although historically there hasn't been that kind of change in guard in the Soviet Union. Well, there were of course some velvet, pushovers, but not anything that extreme. And if Russia tries to have that war to the bitter end, and there is no kind of modus vivendi that perhaps would allow the European Union to resupply from Russia in the not distant future, while it is actually trying to find other viable suppliers for the far-reaching future, because we do not really know what will happen next. We only can surmise.
Let's move on to something else that I find very interesting. If anyone were to read your bio, they would definitely stop at a concept that I have heard very little about. Amongst the various fields that you specialize in, we find something called electronic foreign policy, and I find this very intriguing. Tell everyone what this is.
I suppose everybody of us nowadays reads the web, reads articles on the web, uses social media like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and I do not really want to go on about names, because social platforms and their popularity will change over in the coming years. I don't know, maybe Instagram will fail, and then TikTok will take its place or whatever. TikTok, by the way, a huge Chinese invention, which really has to do with how to manipulate a population and how to actually get some real social data from the social engineering that goes into actually using the app. So electronic foreign policy is really trying to find, to reach all those external audiences, to the one emanating a certain foreign policy message, actually reaching those audiences, formulating the message in such a way that is actually acceptable to them. Because if I had a political message for the country you are in at the moment, right, Canada, then I would have to formulate. First, I would like to have access by those by all the means that information technology infrastructure gives me, and I would like to formulate a message that would be acceptable to you, depending on your sex, depending on your education, depending on your age, depending on your values. And you do understand that that kind of message would be formulated differently according to the kind of people I want to target. And then I would like to have some ways of actually seeing if that message went through or not. Because if you accept my message, I'm a foreign power, or I'm a foreign non-governmental actor that actually wants something done from your country. Either influence it as to its next moves, or accepting some of my moves or whatever. Then I would like to know how my message is getting across, and then I would like to know some ways of actually reformulating that message if it's not acceptable to you, and trying to attain whatever goals I have by reaching you and having you agree as to my aims. Because at your end, you will as an active citizen, because most of us are active citizens, or what we call digital citizens. I'm not really. We're still debating on whether an actual netizen, as they're called nowadays, actually has a value or not, or it's just another sound, another voice bubbling on. But the thing is that I'm going, of course, to have some political pressure on my on my country's politicians, and I'm going to have an opinion that may be changed by that foreign power or political player, and actually help its aims. So, and another term, of course, of another aspect of electronic foreign policy, of course, is to actually educate your own audience of what's going on, and of actually trying to repel efforts by other powers, efforts of information coming in that are actually contrary to our aims. This really comes under the umbrella of what was termed soft power ages ago, although soft power develops a lot more. It has to do with cultural, it has to do with financial power, it has to do with lots and lots of things. But since we now have the luxury of information technology, electronic foreign policy, especially for countries that are much more advanced in their technological infrastructure know-how, is a great tool to have. And we see the West wielding it much better than, for example, China or Russia.
Mm-hmm. What examples has this been used in? Where would one see something like this happening?
I'll give you an example with Ukraine. There is a social app called Telegram,
Mm-hmm.
which is really an app like WhatsApp or Viber or Signal or anything or any other or messaging apps,
Mm-hmm.
where you can actually have groups of people emailing photographs, videos, chatting, etc.
Yeah.
So while that app had a Russian origin, the Russian state has a love and hate relationship with the persons that actually created the app. It is both used by Russia, by the Russian state, the Ukrainian state, and by Russian and Ukrainian citizens alike. And you actually have a kind of up-to-date information how the war is going on in different areas. And you have lots and lots of propaganda feeds that try to extol the virtues of one armies against the others, of its successes and its victories. Well, for example, the other party tries to exhibit the huge losses the attacking or the other warring party has up to the moment. So you actually see technology being used by state organs, and I suppose Ukraine is much more successful in this than Russia, perhaps because it has been allowed access to Western audiences much easier than Russian propaganda. Right. Russian propaganda, apart from being crude, is not really that sophisticated. It is not really targeting. I don't know. I suppose well-educated Western individuals. Yeah. It has a very sub-specific kind of individual it is targeting. So that is one way of actually using what we term with a somewhat generic term of electronic foreign policy. The thing is, we have all those tools that information technology allows us to have, and which can be used by both countries and by huge corporations alike. You know, if you have the money and the IT infrastructure, you can do it, and the know-how. And they can be used to promote political, financial, and even military aims. You know,
we saw a situation closer to home here in the last or in the previous U.S. elections when President Trump won, and it's under investigation, I believe, now about Russian meddling into that campaign through Facebook and through other social media platforms and controlling messages and advertisements. And it's currently being investigated in the U.S. But it's fascinating to see the impact that such actions can have on such a large scale through a social media platform. It's something that we never envisioned, right? We were all there when Facebook started, and it was always just a fun little
like a social experiment. You know, we can meet up with our friends.
Exactly.
Oh, hooray!
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, President Obama was Obama's communication team.
He was the first to use this platform.
Yeah, he was quite a pioneer, and he was very adept to it.
Well, I think most of his fundraising came from small donors because of social media strategies. If I'm not mistaken, there's a case study on that.
Well, and he really knew how to do the sound bite, the small video clip, all those things that can be used endlessly in social media, and that can help you achieve your goal. It is something that President Trump had, of course, as well, although catering for a very different subset of audience, and which other presidents or would-be presidential candidates did not have. So the modern politicians, apart from all the other things he or she should have that as well. So we're kind of reaching a point where we're actually asking for a better actor rather than a better brand of politician.
Right.
And that's a very sobering thought. And it's a very, very difficult thing to process and get away from.
So you think...
Because,
yeah, go ahead.
Because, I don't know, imagine if you were somebody that would make a great politician, an actually great hands-on politician that could actually do things. If you were not that adept in public dialogue, bringing your point across, or you weren't photogenic enough or whatever, then what would attain to is would really vote for another public idol, right? The way we see, the famous Instagram personas or whatever, with their reality TV shows, then that is the kind of politician we're going to have in the long term. And that, of course, is going to influence a lot of the institutions that actually produce them. And that is going to bring about changes where, of course, a society will be much easier to be invaded by thoughts and aims that may be detrimental to its integrity and survival.
Right. So you think you believe that these platforms will amplify their effect going forward in the next couple of years in the political scene?
Not even. They have already been doing that. Right now, we have such huge platforms, like Google, Amazon, Instagram, Facebook. And it doesn't matter what they say. They actually have political views. It may not be that apparent in your face, but by the way they are trying to, and it's a very difficult thing to do. By the way they are curtailing speech and what they allow through their platforms, they're actually modulating the political debates that are going on.
Right.
Twitter famously banned President Trump. Should he do it? Or some of President Trump's tweets not really suitable for public consumption, let alone from a president? Perhaps, yes. But that power of actually closing the external audience to you and opening it up is a huge power to have. And it's a power that has actually been attained by corporations who have almost unlimited access to our lives, have a lot of our personal data. So since they have a lot of our personal data, what we read, what we listen to, they do have some social profiles on us. And through those social profiles, they can modulate the message they want to reach us and to make us accept it.
Interesting.
So it's a sobering thought for what may become, to what democracy may become in the next decades. Because I'm from a generation that saw both the analog and digital thing, but youngsters nowadays are all digital. They have actually been conditioned to thumb up, thumb down, doing all the swiping we do in our everyday life and do not pay attention to. But what will happen to them? Because they will actually think that this is the kind of normality,
right?
And this is to put it in perspective with what happens to Russia right now. Russians, some certain part of the Russian populace thinks that what President Putin is doing is, a special operation for denazification.
Yeah.
Because they have been conditioned to actually accept such kind of propaganda. They have been conditioned to because parts of the Soviet information machine is alive and kicking.
Interesting. Definitely something to keep an eye on going forward. I want to wrap it up. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Doctor. In closing, any interesting books or publications that you want to recommend to the listeners?
You really take me by surprise there.
Any interesting books that you're reading right now that you'd like to share with the audience?
Let me have a look. The thing is, I'm mostly reading articles nowadays and literature, so I can't really recommend something off the cuff.
Right.
I suppose it's the way we're actually consume data and information nowadays, that it's not really that we don't have time for a book. It's really that we actually, we take a book, we actually read the parts of it that may be there to our specialization.
Right.
And that's a very dangerous thing to have. And your question will really make me think nowadays on why am I not reading so many books and rather reading specialized data.
In that case, we'll refer everyone to the Strategy International website. They will find your profile. They can read and follow up on the articles that you write. Super interesting stuff. Doctor, I want to thank you again for your time. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your very interesting interview, and I wish all the best for the Strategy International podcast and for you personally.
Thank you so much, and hopefully one day we'll see each other personally.
Yes, that must definitely be our aim.
Exactly. Thank you once again, and thank you everyone for listening or watching. Make sure to go and follow the page, subscribe, and share the content, and we will see you again on another episode of the Strategy International podcast. Take care.